Office and summer interns regarding the modernization of Columbus City Code. The code is a historic document that has been built and changed over the decades. It contains ideas and terms that don't meet our expectations as a 21st century city. I'd like to thank Deputy Solicitor General Friedman for participating today, as well as Mr. Chris Maitland from Council's Legislative Research Office for helping to shepherd this project along. I look forward to hearing presentations from staff and our intern cohort who did the substantive work to get us these recommendations today. So I look forward to the presentations, and with that I'll turn it over to Mr. Friedman for any remarks.
Thank you, Council President. Councilmember Remy, staff, all the interns, thank you for all of your assistance on this project. It is pretty voluminous going through this code. We do appreciate the opportunity to have the City Attorney's Office involved to make sure that all the I's are dotted, T's are crossed, and we think the group here did a wonderful job, and we appreciate their hard effort. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Again, we appreciate your leadership and engagement in the City Attorney's Office for your support. I'll recognize my colleague, Emmanuel, Remy, who is with us. Any opening remarks? All right, with that, let's get started. Let's see. Let's start with introductions before we jump into it. Can we have the interns who, and do you guys, is it okay to be called the interns? I mean, okay, the interns. We will start and we'll go around so the viewing public can hear you, and please tell us what office you are interning in.
My name is Lauren Lewis, and I am interning with the Council President's Office.
And what school and year, or what year in school you are?
Sure. I recently graduated from Ohio State, and I'm going to grad school in the fall to get my master's.
Okay.
Hello, I'm Kailash Mishra. I intern in the Community Engagement Office. I go to Ohio State University. I'm going to be a sophomore next year. This coming year, I guess.
Okay.
Good afternoon, my name is Zeta Jenkins, and I am a rising junior at Ohio State and working in Councilmember Remy's office.
Baba Ampa, and I am working with Councilmember Elizabeth Brown, and I am a graduating senior.
Good afternoon, my name is Brandon Bishop, and I am interning in Councilmember Favor's office. I am a rising senior at Ohio State.
Awesome.
Hello, I'm Laura Gaduni. I'm an incoming Master of Public Administration candidate at Ohio State, and I intern in the Legislative Research Office.
Hi, my name is Mitchell Pinsky. I'm a rising senior at The Ohio State University and am interning in the Office of Communications.
Good afternoon, my name is Henry Hallerson, and I'm a rising junior interning with Councilmember Mitch Brown.
Hello, my name is Ryan Redding. I'm interning with Councilmember Dorans, and I'm a master's student at Ohio State.
My name is Luke Simonello Delamani. I'm going to be a junior in the fall, and I'm interning with Councilmember Tyson's office.
Awesome. Well, welcome. I can say on behalf of all of my colleagues that we are extremely grateful for the work that you have done, not just on this project, but helping us move legislation and policies forward in your respective offices. With that, I'm going to turn the floor over to Chris Maitland from the Legislative Research Office.
Thank you. How about now? There we go. Thank you. The Columbus City Code Modernization Project, or Ordinance 2019-21, updates Columbus City Code by removing gendered terms such as fireman, chairman, and manhole from Columbus City Code and replacing them with gender-neutral language such as firefighter, chairperson, and maintenance hole. The ordinance also removes gendered subjects such as he and she, etc., objects, him and her, and possessive subjects, his and hers, pronouns, and replaces them with gender-neutral descriptions. Additionally, changes are made to remove language that is outdated, not commonly used today, or offensive. These changes are technical and make no operational changes to the city of Columbus. The purpose is to reflect gender inclusivity, as well as removing words that no longer correctly reflect individuals in our society. The ordinance also makes several changes to Columbus City Code to eliminate any inconsistencies or conflicts with Ohio Revised Code. Changes like the ones that we are being discussed today have taken place in many parts of our country and world, not only in government entities like cities and states, but also corporations. For example, the United States House of Representatives passed a resolution earlier this year to remove gendered language in the rules of the 117th Congress. In 2020, the New York City Council removed alien from local laws, and upon his election, President Biden, through his administration, announced that they would remove words such as alien from language used at various federal agencies such as the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services and the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. In 2010, the United States Congress passed Rose's Law, which repealed the use of the word mental retardation and replaced it with intellectual disability in federal law. In 2016, the Ohio State House passed similar legislation for the Ohio Revised Code. So the changes that we will be discussing today are ones that have taken place in many different areas as we look to build a more inclusive city and show our residents that we are thinking of them at where they are. Columbus City Code was originally written in 1959, and some of the provisions that are part of our city code had not been updated since then, or written at a time where only men were contemplated for certain positions. In Columbus, we currently have a female city clerk, female city auditor, female city treasurer, and female head of departments. And this legislation will ensure that whoever is in charge of these bodies or any other part of where laws can affect them in Columbus, that they will be properly identified. With that being said, to go over the basic premises of this legislation, I would like to say that I was helped by the great skills of our interns who just introduced themselves, and they will be helping me by making themselves available for any questions that the council members have.
Thank you, Chris, for that overview. Well, you laid out the foundation for why we're here today. A lot has changed since 1959, specifically who can and sit and who has sit or who sits in these seats that are referenced in the code. Could somebody go a little bit further in terms of how often were these changes, how often were these necessary? How often were we using gender-specific specifications in the code?
I'll be fair to everyone and take this one since I did the overall project and looked at everyone's work. So it happened quite often. Basically in a lot of things, even where general offenses law, where you talked about different crimes people committed, it wasn't even contemplated that a woman could commit a crime. Or when applying for certain permits or licenses, it wasn't assumed that a woman or any gender non-conforming person could apply for such permit or license. So this legislation changes were throughout all parts of code, whether it was referencing housing, environment, economic development. Wherever there was a section of city code that existed, there was a change that needed to make sure that not only men were contemplated by whatever the law was saying. So the changes are quite large in number.
Could somebody else also elaborate on just the necessity of doing this and doing it now? Are there other cities that are doing this type of work?
Luke?
Yeah, maybe I'll speak to the necessity and maybe someone else can talk about the other cities. Well, I think just in a grand sense, when, for instance, if I go on like a company's website and it looks kind of janky or outdated, you don't really get a good sense that this company or like is legit or can provide good services. And I think that's the same for Columbus City Code. As a city, if we want to attract great talent to the city, just to live or to work, I think we have to have a code that reflects the modern era. And that's the 21st century. And that's an era where women and men and anyone in between can be anything, whether that's a criminal or a director of development.
Thank you, Mr. Maitland.
I think Lauren had something to add.
Oh, I was just going to speak to other cities that had adopted code modernization and gender-neutral language. So we're kind of also on the same wave as Berkeley in California, as well as Oakland, New Orleans, and our friend in the Midwest, Madison, Wisconsin. So I think that we're, doing this in a good time because a lot of other cities that are our peer cities are also doing these code modernizations to include gender-neutral language.
One more quick question, I'm gonna turn it over to Councilmember Remy. Usually when we engage with policy, some that will have a outward-facing presence, so the residents of Columbus will look at this and see a difference. Are you guys recommending any public outreach, community outreach? Who would be the audiences that you would recommend council engage with to inform them, educate them about these changes, and how would you recommend going about that? Young lady in the back.
Ryan?
Yeah, so I can touch on that a little bit. I think that this is something that council should honestly spread far and wide, these changes being made. As it was discussed, many cities have done this before. And this is something that we are getting to fairly retroactively now, but it's something that we can be proactive about in the future. And so as we bring in community members, as we bring in other advocates, we all know that language is changing nearly constantly at this point. And this is something that we've made updates, but there are still updates to make. And so if we tell the community about these updates and if we bring advocates in, it will be much easier to make changes in the future proactively, because when communities are telling you how they want to be referred to and how they want to feel part of the city's charter, that's something that's going to be really powerful and create a relationship between the community and the city. So I think that's important to inform people that we've made these changes, but also that there's room to continue to if there are other changes that they want us to look at making.
You're so baiting me though to ask the question. What did you guys leave on the table? Are there things that you guys identified that we did not put into the code that we would want to still look at?
Yeah, of course. I can give an example here. I mean, as Ryan mentioned, our language and what is appropriate is constantly evolving, so I'm sure if you ask me this question in 5 years, I may have a different answer. But specifically, one thing that we discussed as a group as just not something that we pursued at this moment was changing the term master plan, because that would have some technical issues. In operation, we'd have to go lots of other places and change that. But that is something that, as a group, we all agreed we would be in support of moving forward as we can engage the correct bodies to do that fully and accurately.
Thank you. Councilmember Remy.
That's a really good point. You know, as a realtor, we've dropped the terminology locally of a master bedroom, and it's generally considered an owner suite or an ensuite, depending on how you want to say it. Do you feel that by doing this truly reflects a modernized Columbus? Like, does this mean that you know, we're right where we should be, albeit a little bit behind the times, but...
Okay, so I would say it's definitely important, just because, as we all know, Columbus prides itself on being a progressive city. So I think that it's really important that we update our code to really reflect these values. And I think in doing so, Columbus could also show it, you know, as we are continuing to grow as a city, it will help us kind of grow as being a leader. But also going off of Zeta's point too, like another commonly used term instead of master plan would be like comprehensive plan, for example.
Yeah, these are all, you know, really good suggestions and something that we as legislators need to consider. I wanted to talk a little bit about how disabled residents are referenced throughout, and then also just talk about the importance of this to a population of our residents, such as new Americans.
Surprised on how wide the word alien was used in the thing, and it is rather peculiar to use that term because it would mean like we're all human, but alien, it's like some coming from some other planet or something. So I think it was kind of important to be inclusive and include that kind of like exclude that kind of language as alien and stuff. Yeah.
I can touch on the use of the word disability. We updated the code to remove words such as handicap, or what's sometimes referred to as the R slur, from city code, and replaced it with language that was more inclusive and more encompassing by using disability, disabled, designated parking, and so on.
Were there any other peculiarities that you found that, wow, this is, like, maybe you even had to look up what it meant?
It was rather peculiar to when I was doing the building code, and every time it was referring to an owner, there was no contemplation of the fact that a woman could be an owner. And even though it was 1959 that code was made, it was rather kind of interesting to see that there was no contemplation anywhere that a woman could own a house.
Well, thank you all for your work on this. It's tedious but very, very important work to go through as much code as you did, and so appreciate that. And Adam, for your work guiding this project along.
Thank you, Councilmember Remy. Just like the final question, I was trying to get into this earlier in terms of like community engagement. I like to know when I'm voting on or proposing legislation, who's going to be happy about it and who's going to be mad about it. And not that I care, not that it will change my opinion, but it allows me to understand how we articulate it to different groups. Is there any thought about stakeholders who would be, that we should reach out and say, hey, we did this, or because they would be very pro, or folks that we have heard maybe in these other cities that there were opposition that came about, and how did they deal with it? Full question.
So I think it would be very worthwhile to reach out to members of our local queer community and people who are, you know, non-conforming, because this is something that will be more inclusive to them as far as what is written in our code. Some people are gender non-conforming. They use they, them pronouns, and this change that we've made to the code, it includes those people, and I think that they'll be very excited about that.
Laura.
I will also add that, in addition, we just want to make sure that we're kind of putting this inclusivity into like our daily practice, not only just having them written out as words in the code, but also making sure that we're inclusive like in the city staff and towards city residents about using the correct pronouns and being inclusive of all genders.
That's awesome. Young lady in the far back.
Yeah, I'd also like to add that, you know, as a young woman, and some of my colleagues have shared other young women throughout this project, that it is very meaningful to us personally to have our gender be recognized in the city code and our city charter. I would like to see outreach to maybe women's leagues or youth organizations, specifically ones that are geared toward political activism or civic engagement, education. That sort of engagement, I think, would be very well received by those populations.
That's awesome. Yes, sir.
I mean, as myself, a permanent resident in the United States, I think I would appreciate being not called an alien, and a lot of immigrant community in Columbus would be appreciative of the fact that we're not being called aliens in the city code.
Yes, Councilmember.
Yeah, I was, one other thing I was kind of thinking about, because there are code changes here, but obviously the references to the charter would require some sort of a referendum. Did you guys talk about what next steps might be in regards to accomplishing that?
So we spoke with the group that obviously we were able to, and through our process, change Columbus City Code, but any sort of change to the charter would involve a vote by the public. So there would need to be an initiative to put this forward to get people to vote for it. The charter does include some of the same issues that we are updating through this legislation. So by updating the charter, we would put that in conjunction with the work that we're doing today.
Sounds like a good project to include in our civil service review.
Yeah, certainly. Thank you, Councilmember. Well, I think that concludes this hearing of the Rules and Reference Committee. I again want to thank the City Attorney's Office, Mr. Adam Friedman, certainly Chris Maitland from the Legislative Research Office, Matt Erickson, the director of that office, and certainly you guys who over several weeks took the time to do the deep dive. We look forward to introducing this legislation on Monday, on July 26th, for consideration. So we are very grateful for the work that you've done. With that, it concludes today's hearing. Thank you.
Thank you.